Okay, I'm going to get things started and just kind of get myself organized here, get my notes organized for the show. I hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's having a good Wednesday here. I'm still getting used to the Wednesday slot. It was over a year of doing these on Sundays, and switching to Wednesday at noon has been great. I've seen a lot of new faces tuning in, which has been fantastic. And we're getting closer to episode 100, which is very, very, very exciting, which I'll talk about later in the show. Yeah, we got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. I think the main thing that's on my mind right now is just a general change in the winds, as I'd put it. I sent out a tweet, I think, this morning. I'm getting the same feeling in my gut that I got kind of late 2021, early 2022. I don't know how many people were in the Hedera ecosystem at that time. Feels like the Stone Age at this point. A year in Web3 is a lifetime. But it was very interesting at that time. We had HBAR was trading at, double digits. And we had NFTs that had just started to kind of become a thing. And DeFi was still kind of a bit of a dream. It was a very interesting time. And it was kind of the peak of that bull market that we ran into. And then also the Hedera NFT heat wave and like all that different type of stuff. It was a really interesting time, especially because when you look back at it, there really wasn't a whole lot going on with the Hedera network. I mean, from a retail standpoint, from an enterprise standpoint, I mean, the governing council was rocking. I think at that time, Lehman and Mance were still at Hedera as chief scientist and CEO. Lehman may have still been doing the monthly Zoom calls. Simpler times. And even though there was less happening on the network, we didn't really have DeFi. There was no saucer swap. There was no major NFT marketplace. There was a lot of excitement about Hedera around the technology. And when you look back at that time, you kind of go, well, why did HBAR pump in price so much when you could argue now versus then, it's night and day. There, comparatively, there wasn't a whole lot happening on the network back then. And it really goes to show that, for better or for worse, hype does play a big role. I think that, I was talking last week about, substance versus hype. I think we're learning more and more that those two things feed each other. I'm excited to talk about hype in general. I think that in the Hedera community, it's a little bit of a taboo topic, but, I think it's time to talk about it. I think some folks are already talking about it. And on that too, I'm going to share some thoughts just kind of on Hedera's marketing in general. We're going to talk about Flutterwave, which is a very interesting use case that I didn't get a chance to touch on last week. Last week's show was crazy. I had to pack so much stuff in because I'd been away for a week or so traveling. So this week I can loop back on that and talk about that. We're going to do some governing council predictions. It's been too long. There's a lot of controversy around the governing council and what's going on with that. A lot of questions. I want to have some fun. It's been a while. I mean, it depends on what your attitude is. I think that I'm getting a general sense of, in spite of everything that's happened in the crypto space, there's a little bit of lightheartedness. There's nothing wrong with that. Have a bit of fun. We're also going to talk about a question I have on permissioned nodes. And this is a question that has kind of been jostling around in my mind as we approach the expiry of some of these governing council member initial terms. We're going to talk about the new data on disk feature. Also, the Hashgraph got a big upgrade Took me quite a while to like figure out what all of it meant, and how it all worked. I'm not a terribly technical person, but I think that when you actually break it down and take a closer look at it, you realize kind of the substance side of things. We're going to talk about Citadel IoT moves. Citadel is doing some crazy stuff. We're going to talk about Twigital. I see Brandon at Twigital listening down there. Shout out to you. I wanted to just share my thoughts on the app and just kind of stuff like that. And then I'm going to talk about episode 100, kind of what I have planned for it. To be honest, it's been a crazy year. I don't have anything too crazy planned. I know for episode 50, we gave away like, it was more of an NFT vibe. I had Dead Pixels on the show. I had Hangry Barboons on the show. I had King Solomon on the show. It was like 3 hours long. We gave away a Dead Pixels Ghost Club pass and a bunch of other crazy stuff. To celebrate episode 100, I kind of just want to have it be a bit of a relaxed vibe. I don't want to go too crazy with it. I want to just, one of my favorite aspects of episode 50 was just recapping the last year. Like I don't often get a chance to do that with how quickly things are going, is actually look back over the year, look at the full picture. It's okay sometimes to just take the tip of the iceberg and kind of take a look at it and see like, what was that, those top 10% of headlines, what were the most impactful stories over the year? And what do they look like when they're kind of meshed all together? What does that timeline kind of feel like? So I'm excited about that. But with that, hello from Ottawa, Canada, everyone. My name is Brandon Davenport, aka It's Brandon D. It is November 1st, and you're listening to episode 98 of Hashgraph Enthusiasts News Show. Hype is in the air, and I can say that for a fact. This is a weekly news show where we cover the top 10 stories related to Hedera, HBAR, and everything in between. Listen live on X Spaces every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other platforms to hear past episodes. Also, I'm going to be doing more interviews coming up. I've been very busy, but I'm hoping to do some more interviews soon, so stay tuned for that. Get all the info you need about the show and subscribe at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. And for folks listening live on X Spaces now, check out the post pinned to the top for a list of our top 10 stories. Also, take a moment to share the spaces with your friends. And if you got some interesting news people should know about, click the comment button at the bottom right. Let me know. Maybe we'll talk about it. For folks listening on podcast platforms, leave a comment, break down your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going. And I don't know, I kind of want to kick it off. You know what? Maybe we'll give a couple minutes here. Brandon, I don't know if you're around. I'd love to have you up. Maybe chat real quick about Twigital. But for folks unfamiliar, I was able to Twigitize an Elvis head, a genuine 1950s bust of Elvis that was actually purchased at an Elvis show. But that was done on testnet. Now the Twigital app is available on the actual app store on mainnet. So I'll be re-Twigitizing my Elvis head. And I mean, everyone who listens to the show, most folks in the space already know about Twigital. I don't think we need to rehash it. Brandon, I'm just really curious, like, it's finally live now. You can go to the app store, you can type in Twigital, anyone can download it. And I mean, you've been working on this for so long, and just from the purview of like a founder, a project, I asked this question to Solo after, years of developing Galaxy. What is it like, just now it's out there now, that next chapter has begun. Like, does it feel like a load has been taken off, or does it feel like the pressure's on? I'm curious.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I mean, starting from the beginning, it was just an idea. Like, this is something we should do based off of what Lehman said. The world will be tokenized. Everything of value will be tokenized. We're like, well, there's a lot of things of value that are just physical objects out there. We have our display shelves and all that kind of stuff. How can we best capture that? So it was trying to figure out how we could best capture those objects, and then, going from that, can we do that? Can we use those kind of NFTs on Hedera? And now how do we string together an application that allows you to do that all within the workflow of a single application? So it was, trying to actually see if we could come up with a product around that. And we've had, as you mentioned, we've had the private beta for 6-8 months. We've been playing with it for a long time. But so there is a load off now that we've got it out there. We have some people using it. We can already tell there's people that are, trying to build their skills around photogrammetry and get better at it. And so it's fun to watch. But now, the pressure is on. Now we have to get to the point where it's viable as a business, and, building our own businesses around it. So kind of to show how other people can build businesses around these assets as well. But it's been a fun process. We're running a contest just to give everybody a heads up, because it is a learning process to learn how to do photogrammetry. But there are certain objects that are easy to do, and there are certain objects that can be more challenging. I know some people I've already seen, looking at the explorers that have tried to do coins and things like that. And we've had a lot of success with stuff like that. You've seen I see Iron Chief on here. He created a token that we were able to Twigitize at Hello Future Live. But that's something that takes a little bit of practice. Once you figure it out, once you get an object dialed in, it becomes pretty easy. But you do have to learn how to do it. So we have a contest running right now to do jack-o'-lanterns. It was just Halloween last night. So you might have a pumpkin or a gourd or a jack-o'-lantern lying around. Go ahead and try that out. Just stick it in your driveway. Download the Twigital app, take a few dozen pictures of it, walking around it, getting a few angles from it. I don't think you have to get the bottom. And then you could just quote tweet our contest with either the Twigital cert, a picture, or a video of, in object capture, and just check it out and post it. And you're up for winning, a few thousand HBAR that we have up for grabs. So that's fun as well.
I love that. And I remember months ago, probably early this year, we were on a Spaces, and you were first starting to kind of share the complete vision of Twigital and the product. And something that attracted me to it was, as an NFT creator and artist, is like, there's digital artists and people that have artistic mediums that lend themselves better to NFTs inherently. But there's a lot of artists out there that work with physical mediums, that work with even painting or all sorts of different things like that, where part of the aesthetic, part of the substance of the art is, the frame that the painting is in, or the texture of the paint on the canvas, or the sculpture, different things like that. And it's like, as an artist, people can say, there's lots of apps in the App Store where you can do photogrammetry, but as a workflow, and as maybe an artist that isn't a digital artist that wants to participate in, the NFT ecosystem, having an app that you can use to capture your artwork, Twigitize it, and then have it as an NFT on Hedera, like that just opens up a whole gateway. That's kind of what comes to my mind from use cases. But I'm curious for you, like, as the app has launched and as kind of the awareness around it has grown and you've been showing it to people, like, what do you think are the key areas initially where this app is going to be leveraged? And are there kind of any use cases that have kind of surprised you, maybe that you guys didn't think of, in ways that people are using the app already?
Brandon, these are great questions. The first thing is that we want to, how much have NFTs, the first iteration, the 2D version, how much has that empowered digital artists, in this first iteration? We want to do the same thing for the people working in the physical world, whether they be collectors or sculptors or artisans or craftspeople. We want to give them the same tools to be able to leverage the Web3 ecosystem. Initially, I think it's just going to be fun, like the little contest we have that I just pinned. You can do that kind of stuff. You can capture your kids' art. But the next thing, I think we're going to see people leveraging them as bearer assets as the value transfer mechanism, putting them on Web3 marketplaces and things along those lines. So I think that's the next iteration. There's going to be challenges around that, but it can be done the same way you see with eBay, or you could have some kind of a clearinghouse. So you send your object to, say, a central clearinghouse that holds on to them, insures them, properly stores them. And then because we have these digitally immersive environments that we're going to be getting with things like, Apple Vision Pro, you don't necessarily ever have to take possession of the object because you can display it and show it off and flex it in those environments. But when somebody, if you do have a clearinghouse like that, somebody does want to take physical possession of it, we can send it out, or the entity that's doing that can send it out. So that's another thing. But it's interesting because there's been a lot of use cases that we didn't even think of. So I already talked about, capturing your kids' art. That's one of the things my co-founder Jesse does with all his kids' art now, because of course it's going to fall apart in a few weeks anyway. Same thing, the jack-o'-lanterns are going to fall apart in a fairly short order. But we also sell Rob Allen, another person that's really famous in our space. He's one of our greatest evangelical, people getting out there. He's on my show all the time, but he went to Everest Base Camp, right? And you can't take the rocks that you have as a memento, as a keepsake, but you can Twigitize it. So it can be used for things that you want to capture, but you can't necessarily take with you, and going beyond just taking a 2D picture of it, right? You can then leverage it in other places, leverage it in these immersive environments and so forth. So there's some of the things. And then we, of course, can go down the things. It can be used in insurance and for anti-counterfeiting. I mean, we could go down the line. But I think there's going to be a lot of ways that they can be used.
That's so exciting, man. And just as I get on with the show here, I wanted to give you a chance here. Like, what's the best way for people to dive in and get started with the app? And then maybe what are some helpful tips as they kind of try Twigitizing their first Twigitals? I love saying that word.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing, you just download the app. You want to try objects when you start. First of all, we do have a Twigital on YouTube, or you can go to Twigital app on X, and you can see we've posted, a how-to guide, how to use the application. It walks you through, what kind of backgrounds you should have. You should kind of have a flat matte background if possible. But a turntable is certainly good to have, so you can capture all those angles. But the one thing I didn't mention, or we didn't mention in that tutorial or that guide, was the objects themselves. So you want to have something that holds its shape. So like a plush toy that flops over and things like that, or a hat that's going to move as you're trying to capture the picture, or a pet. That's not going to be a great object. The object itself, if it has more of a matte finish, that usually works better. But then again, you capture that Elvis, and that had a fairly glossy finish, and that was able. So you can give it a shot. But you want something to be more 3D. So we talked about coins. They can be more difficult, especially if you're lying them on their edge. So you want something, I would say, football size. You want to start with something around football size that has a matte finish, that has good 3D. It's not flat. Things along those lines. And that's why we started with pumpkins, because they kind of fit with all those things. But just because you try one object and you struggle with it, don't stop there. Try a few other ones until you get it figured out. And once you do start to figure it out, it becomes a lot easier. And I can throw it right back at you, Brandon. I mean, you captured that Elvis. How did that process go?
I mean, I've done photogrammetry stuff in the past, and I mean, it's like you said, every app has its own quirks and features, and also photogrammetry within itself. It's a skill set you can learn and grow with, like especially the device that you use, the LiDAR sensor built into the iPhones and different things like that. It's like, it is a skill that you can cultivate as a creative person and capturing objects better. And it's like, it just takes a couple tries and really thinking analytically about, based off the photos that I take and how close or far they are, different things like that, you start to learn what the output will be. So it's just, it's literally just you practice and you're going to get better at doing it. And you'll get better at doing photogrammetry. It's like getting better at playing guitar or something like that. It's like on your first try, if you try to do something complex, it's going to sound bad. But if you work hard enough at it, like you could totally, Twigitize something crazy, like, and that's a skill within itself. You can get ahead of the technology and its capabilities. It's amazing.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head there. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you figure it out, it's a lot of fun. The other thing that I want to highlight is if you've done photogrammetry in the past and you have those USD files, the universal scene description files, or USDZ if they're compressed, if they're zipped, you can mint those directly using Twigital as well, and then view it and all that kind of stuff within our application. So you already created the Elvis there. If you saved that by any chance, you can mint that right away. Now, right now, the testnet version of what we had is not up, so you won't be able to recover that account until we get it back up. So if you just want to wait until we get the testnet version, you can get the testnet version again and recover it, or something along those lines, and get your Elvis. But if you did save it by any chance, you can mint that directly. You don't have to go through the process of capturing it again.
You know what? I'm going to do it again because practice makes perfect. And this next Elvis will be the most incredible Elvis I've ever minted to mainnet. So I appreciate you stopping by, Brandon. Have a great rest of your day, man. It's so exciting to see the app out there.
My pleasure. Everybody go out there on the iOS App Store, go ahead and download it and participate in that contest and see if you can win some HBAR.
Right on. I dig it. Yeah, I love that. Free app and you can win some HBAR. I mean, what's better than that? I dig it. Now, I want to talk about hype. And, when we look at what I call the hunger for hype in this ecosystem, it's pretty intense. And I think it's, maybe it's a cyclical thing. Maybe, it's just an end of year thing. Maybe, people are feeling optimistic with a fresh year ahead. Maybe it's the pump in Bitcoin, or maybe it's, these ETFs that might get listed, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's that. Who knows what it is? But in general, I'm definitely getting, as I said at the top of the show, is like just a gut feeling that I had back in, late 21, early 2022. And it I can't really put my finger on it. It's just the very beginnings of something. And it brings up something really important, which is the substance versus hype type thing in the Hedera community. I mean, I was going off on this in the last episode very aggressively, but my sentiment is basically, at this point in the Hedera ecosystem, it's hype. Maybe we need a new word or something. I think that hype triggers some people and it makes them think of some of the more negative things that can happen in crypto for sure they're associated with the word hype. But when I say hype, what I mean is action, enthusiasm, and excitement. Maybe a little bit of naivety, or maybe eyes bigger than your stomach, that kind of hype. And it's that kind of interplay between substance and hype a little bit. You kind of like, especially right now, you have to have both. And clearly, last month we did over 4 billion transactions on the Hedera mainnet. We averaged like 1.6 thousand transactions per second. It's insane. It's crazy. HBAR as an asset, right? The price action of HBAR has woken up. It's, you look at the chart and it's, the ranges are larger. We're holding above 5 cents now. It's, it feels like it's kind of come alive a little bit. Last week, we talked about some insights shared from Shane, who's the CEO of the HBAR Foundation. We looked at the Masari report that they do to kind of break down the growth of the ecosystem. I mean, a little asterisk there. They are funded by the foundation, but I do find their reports to be pretty darn objective, so I appreciate it. I mean, Hedera is a multi-billion-dollar unicorn startup, well-positioned in multiple verticals, with 10x year-over-year growth. And, we also talked about, oh, most of the transactions are just 99, they're 99% HCS transactions. Those don't earn any money. But the non-HCS transactions, we're seeing a lot of growth in those. And sure, you could argue as well that, oh, well, most of the HCS transactions are done by Avery Dennison and those are subsidized by the foundation and this and that. But you got to remember as well, it's not like that value is leaving the network. It's not like Avery Dennison is selling that HBAR to pay for employees or whatnot. They're just using that HBAR to, buy usage of the network. So in theory, that HBAR provided by the foundation to Avery Dennison that's being spent on these transactions, some of that's going back to your wallet if you're staking HBAR. It's going back to the Hedera treasury. The velocity of the network is increasing. So also too, it's like I look at the crypto industry more broadly. And last week we talked about the fact that, Polygon now has kind of like a governing council type thing going on. They've listed a number of people or entities that will be a part of some kind of council that will provide governance. And it's just, to me, there is definitely people paying attention to Hedera as an L1, as a network. And I think that I've spoken to this before. Hashgraph is a very disruptive technology. A lot of people are going to be disrupted. I mean, this industry, the crypto industry, is largely driven by fees, right? And when you talk about an L1 that has low fixed fees, it's like, well, that's in direct contrast. That's in direct contradiction to the engine that keeps this industry running. So it's a very fascinating technology. And when I get this gut feeling like I'm talking about, like I had at the end of 2021, it makes me excited, but it also, I do get a little worried. I think that it's very important for people in the Hedera community to remember that largely the value of this network initially is going to be driven by retail. It's the industry that this is in. Now, again, we do have a lot of enterprises on this network. They're rolling out use cases, and I think that's fantastic. But the reality is that even just to secure the network, we need more than a couple thousand users on the network, right? And when they get here, they need really cool things to do. And those really cool things aren't necessarily going to be built, and I don't think should be built by, governing council members or swirls or whomever, right? It should be a startup economy, little ecosystem that can have these exciting things spring from it. And, like talking about Twigital and then looking at the DeFi ecosystem with Saucer Swap and their version 2 protocol coming. When we look at Hashpack, they just announced new onboarding, so you can, when you open up your Hashpack, you can immediately take your fiat and using the C14 platform, just buy sauce, buy karate token. It's just wild. Or buy HBAR. So it's like all these things and all these pieces are starting to come into place from these startups and projects. These are the things that are going to create an environment that will accelerate growth and make things happen like they did in 2021, but at a larger scale. And to be honest, the things that are going to hold us back are an example of an attitude would be, whoa. We're not, let's focus on 10 cents first, right? Let's not jump to new all-time highs right yet. There's still a lot to do. What's attractive about that? Like, just being frank here, like as a community member on another network that maybe is looking at Hedera, right? And going, hey, I think that this technology is really great, but the attitude in the community is so realistic and so analytical and so substance focused that we kind of lose sight of the excitement factor. And to be frank, that's what's going to draw in retail. And to be really frank, it's like you look at Solana recently, you look at some of these other networks, and it's like it's not generally going to be substance that kicks things off, right? It's really going to be sentiment. And that sentiment has to be generated by this community. It's not going to be generated by another community. Arguably, it's going to be stifled by other communities initially, as we've seen. So it's really up to us to kind of take a step back and remember that this bear market, right? This period in Hedera isn't the way that it's always going to be. And, you know, again, to be fair, is to get through this period, it's required realism, right? It's required hard work, and it's required substance. And as I look at the bigger picture now, and as I look at what Swirlds is doing, when I look at what Hedera is doing, the governing council, guys, they've got the substance thing covered. Like, we're going to talk about some stuff later on in the show, like data on disk and Hashgraph. The substance stuff is fine. The substance stuff is covered. That's their job. That's all they want to do. And, you know, they do it better than anyone in the industry. Our job as a community is the excitement side, the hype side, the things that we do that created situations like the DeFi summer and the NFT heat wave and stuff like that. That's the spirit, that's the culture, that's the community. And it's not something that can be quantified. It's not something that can be reasoned. It's not something that can be made sense of. And it really is going to require this community to kind of let go of some stuff and think twice when you see a post on X from a community member that's going, I think Hedera is going to go to $4. There's a part of me that wants to go, hey, what information do you have that leads to that conclusion? And, we need to break the 6 cents resistance first and test that as support for a few months before we can even think about talking about $4. I need to leave that attitude at the door. Like, we really can't afford to have that attitude right now as community members. Again, that's Hedera's job. That's Swirl's job. We always whine about how focused they are on these things and how they won't, take that kind of hype side to things. And it's like, that maybe is as it should be. And maybe it's a sign that us as a community should embrace that hype side a little more and kind of, switch our brains off a little bit. Because when you look at things from the outside, as someone outside of the Hedera ecosystem, that's something that's really attractive. That's a real contagious energy, right? That is going to be the thing that grows us from a few thousand users to more and more and more and more users. That's what's going to energize startups, raise the morale of projects, and help spur development for things that we really need. Get loud about the things that we want and the things that we need. That sometimes it doesn't. You don't need a plan so much, or you don't need a goal. You just need to not rein in the excitement too much. And I think it's time to, let things loose a little bit, have some fun. And next time you see some kind of crazy prediction out there from someone in the ecosystem, I don't know if it's time to get super analytical and break things down too much. I think that at that point, we'd really be spinning our wheels. Most of these OG community members are very well versed in the technology of Hedera, and new people in this ecosystem aren't going to enter this ecosystem because of the technology. They're going to enter the ecosystem because they see a giant honking green candle, right? That's what's going to grab attention. And we need to just kind of leverage the fact that we're so knowledgeable and informative and mature as a community, because when these folks get in and they start looking around and they start questioning their investment thesis and they start wondering what's going on in this ecosystem of this crypto that they've aped into, it's here. And I think that's just going to happen naturally. So I think I'm just getting the sense that this ecosystem's hungry for hype. That's kind of what I'm getting to in my mind. And I'm going to try to be a little more laxed about it. It's fun. I think that those are the things that really get people attracted to a network. People want to have fun. They don't want it to be boring. People, if they wanted to be boring, they'd invest in stocks and bonds and all sorts of different types of investments. When people get invested in crypto, sure, they're trying to make money, but also too, it's like really fun. When you're in a big group chat and there's some exciting market activity in an asset that you hold, it's just incredibly exciting. I think that's another reason why people do this stuff is it's camaraderie, it's community. So we're hungry for hype. Let's set the table. Let's not hold back anymore. I don't think we need to ration the hype anymore. Let it loose, bust it out. Tell everyone to come over. The party's coming. Because if we don't lean into it a bit, it's going to be a pretty crappy party, to be honest. So it's time to have some fun. And I think that this brings me into my second story, which is just kind of on the marketing side of things. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this because it dovetails nicely with this kind of hunger I see in the ecosystem for the hype side of the scale. And then I look at it and I go, okay, so the community, let's get excited. Let's have fun. Let's, throw out some crazy price predictions. Let's dream big. Let's bring the energy. I think that's great. But when we look at how that aligns with Hedera, I also think that Hedera and Swirlds, the HBAR Foundation, there's also some changes that have to happen, and changes that I do think are happening. Lessons learned, perspectives changed. And I think that I was in a conversation in a group chat recently and it was prompted kind of like, what could Hedera do to be more effective? Or when I say Hedera, I kind of clump in any organization charged with branding and marketing this network, right? Which would be Hedera and Swirlds and the HBAR Foundation and the Hashgraph Association. But generally, these associations are, on the substance side. They're VCs, they're career professionals. They are folks that need to do things that demand a lot of rigor, right? And that doesn't necessarily translate into this kind of flywheel of hype we want to get going. And I was thinking about this, and I mean, I work with folks at Swirlds and the foundation and these different types of things in different capacities and collaborative things to, help a lot of ecosystem initiatives. As a lot of people know, I chair operations for the DAO working group and the DeFi Alliance and the NFT working group. And I'm assisting with project management for Wallet Connect. So for me, I look at it from a marketing perspective because that's kind of some stuff that I do. And I think that it's so important, especially at this time for, these organizations, the Hedera organizations that I speak of, to remember that they're not marketing to an idle standing group of people, right? They're marketing the network to a merry-go-round operating at 900 RPM and taking an approach that is based off of details and numbers, I don't think is going to work. And this is the tough part is, again, one of the things that I really love about this network and one of the things that drew me to this network is how conservative the approach is. I think it served them well. We've seen a lot of networks struggle with that and fall under all sorts of different scrutiny. I think that it's been a huge advantage for Hedera to take that kind of approach. But also, I think a lot of people got invested in Hedera because the algorithm was patented, right? The algorithm's not patented anymore. Lehman and Mance aren't at Hedera anymore. Time marches on. Things change, and we have to change with it as we learn. And one of the things that I look at is I look at Hedera's marketing strategy. And I think that they really need to take a more broad stroke approach. I think that when you have a network that has the substance and fundamentals and and has the technology to back it up, you don't need to talk about those things. When you have a network that doesn't have the fundamentals and doesn't have the substance and doesn't have the technology to back it up, you probably should talk about those things. And in comparison to what Hedera and, these related organizations is doing now to market the network, I don't think that they should stop what they're doing. I just think it might not resonate with a retail audience that has this kind of hunger for hype. I think that it's okay to elicit questions instead of focus on explaining things, right? I think that if you are explaining what the network is about at the beginning of next year, you're in a losing position, right? The position you want to be in is you want to be in a position of questions being thrown at you. And I think that when I say broad stroke marketing approach, I really think that it's about just saying, Hedera is the fastest network, executing the most transactions and capable of handling more transactions than any network. Declarative broad stroke statements that naturally is going to cause controversy and naturally is going to excite the existing community with boldness. And I don't know if they can do stuff like this, right? That's the other side to the coin here is I don't know if the amount of red tape and bureaucracy within Hedera and Swirls and this and that would allow these types of things. And again, it's like that's one of the benefits of this network. It's a very fresh approach to other Web3 companies. It's the reason why we've attracted Fortune 10 and 500s to the governing council, and the reason why, major corporations are looking to Hedera to build their applications on is because of this ultra conservative approach, arguably because Hedera hasn't taken such a bold, broad stroke stance with their marketing. But again, I'll bring up something Mance said that is very revealing to me, which is he said that when they were trying to onboard the first 5 governing council members, they had to make many concessions, right? To get the 6th governing council member, they had to go back and revise the bylaws of the LLC and of the governing council to convince those new governing council members to join, right? Those upcoming governing council members had more negotiating power and leverage than Hedera had. And Mance said that they got to a point where they had enough governing council members on board that when they would go to recruit new governing council members, they could simply say, hey, it works for all these folks. It's going to work for you. And that scale was kind of tipped. And I wonder what's going to be that tipping point for Hedera now from a marketing perspective of when they can truly embrace kind of the hype side of things in the very mature way that Hedera does. And I think the way they do that is focus less on details and nuances. I think those types of things are very powerful for the developer community, for the enterprise folks. I think those types of things resonate, and I think that they should just double down on those things in those channels. But when we look at what's being sent out on X or social media or those different types of things, there needs to be more of a willingness to fire from the hip, and there needs to be more of a broad stroke approach. And just instead of, qualifying everything. Like, just, Mance himself said it's a fallacy to assume that Hedera isn't the most decentralized network out there. Why not take that statement from a particular section of an interview on YouTube somewhere and throw that in a megaphone and just put that out as a tweet? Why not just stir things up a little bit, stir the pot? Like, those types of things work. And the reality is that Hedera has the substance to back those things up when challenged. And I think that Hedera should open themselves up to being challenged from a retail perspective and say those more broad stroke declarative statements and welcome the resistance and questions and stuff, because otherwise we're just going to continue seeing a cycle of nitpicking on specific things and just people getting lost in the noise, right? I think it's really on Hedera to provide that signal, that clear messaging of, yeah, we can talk about numbers. We can celebrate another billion transactions. We can talk about time to finality being down, or the fact that, the nodes of our network have equal voting power and high participation, and no hosting service hosts more than 2 nodes, and it's geographic. It's like, that is, you can talk about that stuff till you're blue in the face. You can explain this network. It's going to fall on deaf ears in retail, right? I think it's time to just say broadly, Hedera is the best. We think this is the best. Feel free to challenge that. And it does spark controversy. But nothing spreads faster than bad news. Nothing spreads faster than controversy. And I think that the game that Hedera is in is the Web3 crypto game. And it's going to get insane. If we talk about a bull market coming, Hedera is going to have to they will shift their marketing approach out of necessity, right? To be able to kind of swim with the stream. And I think we just need to take that approach. We need to poke at things a little bit and just understand that when things are analyzed and criticized and questions get asked, we need to truly leverage the fact that we have the substance to back it up, and kind of flip the script a little bit and go, okay, hype versus substance. If you have the substance to back it up, that gives you a great platform to hype things up a little bit. And we all know there are many networks out there, L1s and projects and things, that have no place, hyping things up as they do, but they do. And they have that price appreciation and they have that growth of their ecosystem. But we see time and time again that when the rubber meets the road, networks go down. There's all sorts of different problems. And I don't think Hedera will have those problems. So why not go for it, right? Why not just take that broad stroke, get out of the minutia? And again, we need to continue marketing Hedera as it's being marketed to the correct audiences. But when we look at retail and we want to grow this network from a couple thousand active participants, it's going to take some fresh ideas. So that's my idea. Broad stroke, a little bit of controversy, a little bit of excitement, and do it because we can. I don't think a lot of other networks can do stuff like that, even though they do. If there's any network out there that should be able to hype themselves up, it's Hedera, because you have the substance to back it up. Now I got some other news to talk about, but real quick, I just want to say this show averages about 500 listeners every week on X Spaces and hundreds more on podcast platforms. And over the years, I've covered every major Hedera news event, unpacked almost every juicy rumor, and hosted countless in-depth discussions with important figures in the ecosystem. I see Matt Smith, he's from Dovu down there. Shout out. I had him on the show recently. We had a great conversation about the upcoming roadmap and different stuff. I think it was like episode 92 or something like that. Definitely go listen to that interview. But the best part is I've been able to broadcast it live with all you guys. I love doing the show live. I think doing live shows creates a different dynamic. It feels like anything could happen. My phone could die at any minute. How exciting is that? If you'd like to support the show, consider making an HBAR contribution like many folks in the ecosystem have done. A lot of people share some fun memos too. Like I'll get a contribution of like 20 HBAR and someone's like, hey, I love the show. And, it just makes my day. And as I grow the show, people have reached out in regards to like sponsoring or different things like that. I think that, community support's the best way to do it. It allows me to understand when I should grow the show based off of interest and support from the community. It just kind of closes that loop. So appreciate all the support from everyone. And you can send a contribution using your Hedera wallet. The show's full Hedera address is in the podcast show notes. I threw it in the Jumbotron at the top there. It's also in the YouTube description, all that kind of stuff. Got all the info you need about the show at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. And also, a big help to the show is, leave a rating and review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts. Leave a comment on YouTube. Like, that stuff helps. Massage that algorithm. Help me get that algorithm pumping, guys. And the Hedera community is still a little small, but hope that this show does what it can to help it grow. So appreciate it. And also too, like even, Galaxy, you can send tips on Galaxy. It's a new world we're living in. I love it. Now let's talk about Flutterwave. So Flutterwave, this is interesting. This is one that I wish I talked about last week, but like I said, it was a crazy packed show. But basically, Flutterwave, Africa's leading payments company, has joined forces with Hedera Hashgraph to integrate the USDC stablecoin, aiming to enhance cross-border financial transactions across the continent. This collaboration promises to bring instant, affordable payments and remittance to millions. Now, a little about Flutterwave. I do believe that they are incorporated in San Francisco, I believe, or something. It was very, very interesting. But anyways, the gist here is when we look at this collaboration and how they're leveraging the Hedera network and the VP of Strategic Growth did a presentation as well. Basically, they want to enhance the cross-border financial transactions in Africa. And we've seen this topic talked about quite a bit when we look at, Shinhan Bank and Standard Bank, those remittances. And there's a theme here starting of these different proof of concepts of moving money either within a country or cross-border, the point of sales, those different types of things. This payment infrastructure is being redefined, and Hedera as a network, and especially with HCS as kind of a notary public service, is coming into the fold in a big way. And I think that we've been watching this story unfold through the lens of Hedera. And I think that, this has been a long time coming, integrating DLT with payment rails and banks and these different types of things. I think that Hedera coming into the fold now, I think it's very exciting. So basically with Flutterwave and kind of them leveraging Hedera is they want to offer users instant affordable payments and remittances, addressing challenges like slow settlement times and high transaction costs, right? AKA, wire transfers and all those different things that we're familiar with, where your kind of money just disappears along with $40 and someone gets it in a couple days and you just kind of hope that it works out. Now, while Flutterwave stands to offer enhanced payment solutions, Hedera could see a surge in adoption and utilization of its network, because as more use cases like this come online on the network, I see it as a scenario where you've got a line of people looking to dive into the pool, and everyone's kind of looking at each other, waiting, to see who's going to dive in first. And I think that as more people kind of get in, maybe someone's going to be like, hey, the water's fine and it's working. And it's like, I think that as those first few people kind of dive in and get things rolling, there's going to be more, like it's going to be an exponential curve of adoption, and seeing this kind of innovation outside of the U.S. Because the regulatory environment in the U.S. is not super conducive of this type of work. It's exciting, and the collaboration was unveiled at the Africa Money and DeFi Summit, West Africa. It is a platform known for fostering fintech and crypto collaborations. Now, Flutterwave's commitment to simplifying payments and its impressive growth trajectory in the fintech landscape, basically, they're aiming to simplify payments, catering to payment behaviors across different regions. They have a presence in 32 countries and have processed $25 billion in total payment volume and served millions of merchants. So this is an established network that's looking to offer these better services leveraging Hedera. And I mean, it's a common story being told. It feels like I'm talking about the same use case over and over again, which is exciting because these are becoming more and more focused. And it's becoming clearer at how DLT is going to be integrated. So they're planning to offer solutions for both merchants and individuals, including services like barter, swap, tuition, and the Send app for remittances. So when we look at what the role of distributed ledger technology and remittances looks like from the Flutterwave purview, it's really just about offering faster, cheaper, more efficient cross-border transactions. So remittances represent a significant opportunity in Africa, but the cost of sending money is still very high. So basically, they want to leverage DLT to provide USDC wallets for efficient off-ramping of funds into fiat currency across various mobile wallets in Africa. Again, very similar to a lot of these other use cases we've been talking about. The phased rollout includes USDC payouts into fiat currency, followed by enabling merchants to collect USDC from their customers. So that's very exciting. And the VP of Strategic Growth at Flutterwave says, quote, "Our vision is to transform the way the world conducts business with Africa." So there's a big thing there, right? This is not just about activity within the region. This is about how the global economy interacts with Africa's economy and conducts business, and then vice versa. So this is, again, building that connective tissue. And it's going to be very interesting to see how all these different proof of concepts and use cases converge. And I think the most exciting quote on this is from Rob Allen at the Hashgraph Association. He says on X, quote, "Hedera is going to dominate Web3 payments in Africa." And that's a quote that shouldn't be taken lightly. I mean, Rob Allen is the payments guy. This is his bread and butter. This is what he's all about. He was a rep on the governing council. He was at the HBAR Foundation. He's currently at the Hashgraph Association, and this is what he's all about. And when he says that Hedera is going to dominate Web3 payments in Africa, you best believe that, there's a strong chance of that happening. I criticize often statements from those types of folks. Maybe there's a bit of fluff, or maybe things are walked back, or this and that. But to be honest, Rob Allen is he's on his own wavelength. I mean, the guy climbs Mount Everest and takes pictures of sharks, and he started as a HBARbarian community member in Telegram, and worked his way into the governing council and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, Rob, I definitely a smaller pinch of salt with what Rob Allen says, in my opinion. So something interesting here. So I took a bunch of information about this news, and I took the articles, took the information, I put it into AI, and I basically asked AI to say, listen, can you give me a quick example of how someone would use this technology in kind of a non-technical terms? Like, what exactly does this mean in practice? So what the AI said is this: Imagine Ada, a Nigerian craft seller with customers worldwide. She faces slow and costly international payments. Enter Flutterwave and Hedera Hashgraph. Flutterwave, we already talked about, and Hedera Hashgraph needs no introduction. So how it would work is Ada's customers pay with USDC, right, a digital dollar. Hedera records the transaction quickly and cheaply. Flutterwave converts USDC to Nigerian Naira swiftly and deposits it into Ada's account. The process is secure and much faster than traditional banks. That's basically what it is. So in essence, Ada can now sell her crafts globally without the usual payment hassles. And that's the common thread here with all of these different use cases and proof of concepts when we look at banking and international remittances and all this kind of high finance stuff. Is when you boil it all down, it's really just everyday people being able to make money easier and everyday people being able to spend money easier and move value around. That's really what it's about. And it, again, goes to what Rob Allen talks about quite frequently, which is really impacting lives and doing real work that translates into real value for real people, right? And not just kind of pie in the sky type stuff that's very highly specific to Web3. So there's some substance for you guys. Now, back to the hype side. I want to flip back to the hype switch. We're switching it back over. I want to talk about the governing council, but I don't want to actually talk in any serious fashion. I want to have a little fun. I think last week I got very charged up about the governing council meeting minutes, and it was mentioned specifically that there is a bounty available to certain individuals of $50,000 worth of HBAR to successfully onboard a new governing council member. And, that's not a super foreign concept for a lot of organizations. I mean, many people that work at large companies are familiar with those similar types of incentives and bounties to, for example, bring a new engineer onto the team or different things like that, or, procure a new president for the company or this and that. So it's not an abnormal thing. When the part of my, I don't want to say, maybe I'll use the term frustration. Part of my frustration around it isn't so much what that actually is about. I mean, from the meeting minutes, it's clear that, it can be difficult to onboard a governing council member to Hedera. There's a lot of nuance and communication and organization and all sorts of different things that need to happen. It can be resource intensive, people intensive. But, the reality is, an LLC offering, a reward like that for somebody to help onboard a new governing council member, it's pretty normal. I think that where my frustration comes in is a common theme again of, these types of concepts and these really important things that happen in the network. To Hedera's credit, I mean, it's great that we know that these things are happening. It's great that they publish these meeting minutes and all those types of things. But I think that, if Hedera really is focused on educating the community on all sorts of different technical aspects of the network, I think also, too, maybe some more education could be provided from a business standpoint or operations standpoint. And basically, these different types of things that might be helpful for folks to understand what that's about a little more, some of the rationale behind it. I don't think you can get a lot of that from the meeting minutes. They don't really talk about a lot of rationale behind things or lift the curtain beyond just letting you know what conclusions were made 30 days ago. So I think that for me, it's like, I don't think that stuff's that big of a deal. I think that the red flag for me was kind of like, reading that and just knowing that the community's, it's going to get stuck in the craw. It's going to, definitely color people's opinions on it. And also, I mean, we haven't had a new governing council member come on board since, mid-May. So it's like, it puts the mentality of people in a very specific framing of, we're always being told there's a healthy pipeline of, 30 or some odd new governing council members, as Lehman would say, of names that you recognize. And there's no concern. And even, someone from Swirlds earlier this year saying, the governing council would be filled by the end of the year. And there's all these different types of predictions being made all the time. And, I kind of think about it, and I think there's a lot more to be unpacked on that front. I don't think that right now is the time to do it. But what is the time to do is a good old fashioned governing council predictions Twitter thread. And, again, I know that there is some confusion about this kind of stuff. I know that, that we haven't had a governing council member for, it feels like, ages and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like we're not going to have a new governing council member announced. I feel pretty certain it's going to happen before the end of the year. But really, it's just, we don't really know exactly what the rationale or thinking is behind this. If I put on my tinfoil hat, it's kind of like, is it useful for Hedera to do big, exciting announcements in a bear market when the HBAR charts don't look particularly exciting? Right? I don't know. I mean, coming from the music industry, being in a band, it's like, there's no sense in putting out your record if there isn't a bunch of people excited for it. You know what I mean? It's like, sure, we've got a couple thousand people that are using this network and very excited about it from the retail perspective, with kind of active wallets. But if there is some kind of major governing council member announcement, I could totally see a situation where you kind of go, well, it might be better to capitalize on this announcement at a time when more eyeballs are on Hedera, right? Like your brain kind of goes there. And, Hedera, if you're listening, this is what happens. We got to fill in the blanks. I don't want to be too speculative or, but I mean, this is what happens. It's been a while. So essentially what I did was I put out a post on X and I was like, let's predict governing council members. What's everyone thinking? And I mean, I've shared my thoughts many times. I think at this point it's all homogenized into really this queue of names that we've been talking about over and over again. But there is some really interesting standouts in these predictions that I wanted to share. So basically, let's go through these predictions one by one from each user. I think there was some good thought put into a lot of these. Some of them are very funny as well. So Coinman, the HBARbarian, says, there's lots of sexy potential governing council members I can think of, but for decentralization and diversity of use cases, I'm going to say an NGO and or insurance company. Very interesting. No Man's Internet, who's listening right now, shout out to you, says, thinks there's going to be more coming, but it's been very slow. And I think that it was articulated very well. I think you said that your top three choices in no particular order, and they were all cricket emojis. So I think that sentiment is shared quite a bit. I mean, again, no new governing council members since May. It is what it is. Jacob Zorio from Hashpack says Greg's. Okay. I like that. I can get behind that. HBAR 1000 rattled off quite a few. Johnson & Johnson, Amazon, Chevron, Procter & Gamble, Toyota, Shopify, Walmart. Someone just said right now, Celestial Being said Nestle. To be honest, I've heard people talk about oil gas companies and like Nestle and stuff like that. I mean, again, it's like, some of these companies that join the governing council, I don't know if they're going to be added because they're well loved. They're probably going to be added because maybe they can contribute something considerable to the council in regards to use cases or governance. Like, who knows? Rebel MB8 says Walmart. Walmart's one that keeps coming up. And a note on Walmart is, if folks remember, and again, I don't even know how relevant this is anymore. I don't even know if this is even happening anymore. But Lehman mentioned specifically, feels like 40 years ago in a presentation that a Fortune 10 company would be building a use case geared towards startups. And Walmart is a Fortune 10. Wise Stacker says an insurance company or car manufacturer. So I know that Hyundai is building a use case on Hedera. So that's very, very interesting to me, right? Hyundai Motor Group are building a use case on Hedera, if we recall. One of the criterias for a governing council member joining the council is they must be building on the network. So something we haven't seen in the past is a prospective governing council member announce a use case and then have it be announced that they're joining the governing council. If it is someone in the auto industry vertical, could we see that pattern be formed with Hyundai, them announcing their use case and then later on being announced that they're joining the governing council? Very, very interesting. Now, this one is pretty far out, but is very interesting. From HBAR on Twitter, X, quote, "We'll have every continent except Antarctica covered. So, how about this? The British Antarctic Survey, BAS, is the United Kingdom's National Polar Research Institute. It has dual purpose: to conduct polar science, enabling better understanding of global issues, and to provide an active presence in the Antarctic on behalf of the UK. It is part of the Natural Environment Research Council, NERC. With over 400 staff, BAS takes an active role in Antarctic affairs, operating 5 research stations, 1 ship, 5 aircrafts in both polar regions, as well as addressing key global and regional issues. This involves joint research projects with over 40 UK universities. I don't know, maybe involving University of London, who knows? That would be interesting. And more than 120 national and international collaborations. So you hear the line very often from Lehman, we have governing council representation on every continent except Antarctica. And if you look at the different types of predictions and different types of industries, right? We have tech, we have, all these different types of verticals, supply chain, this and that. Obviously, something like this, you could argue fits into the puzzle, right? And the only question here for me is this a large enough organization, right? 400 employees seems pretty small, but how crazy would it be if there was a physical node in the Antarctic, stewarded by BAS? How crazy would that be? That'd be wild. So shout out to HBAR with that hot take. To be honest, Microsoft, Apple, Walmart, Amazon, whatever. I want an Antarctic node. That's what I want. Then we can safely say Hedera is truly on every continent. Berg the Dip says, would like to see some global supply chain companies. Maersk would be big. We did talk about Maersk in the past. They're like a global supply chain company. There was all these breadcrumbs and rumors, including them using a similar stock footage clip for a promotional video that Hedera had used. All sorts of different other breadcrumbs and things connecting them to Hedera. Previous episode, if you go to the itsbrandond.com/HBAR, go search for Maersk. That's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's Maersk. I talk about it pretty in depth in previous episodes, but that would be very interesting. That's a supply chain company that's right in the wheelhouse. And Berg the Dip says specifically, Hedera has huge disruptive potential in the antiquated world of EDI transactions. So food for thought. Holo_Thunder says Walmart. LeBron NFT says we have Chainlink. Why not Quant? And if folks recall, I do believe that a representative of Quant said in an interview that if you're looking to make affordable, low fee, fixed fee transactions, Hedera is a great option. I mean, there's a little breadcrumb there. And if we look at, the precedent has already been set that a Web3 company like Chainlink Labs would sit on the governing council. It's not insane to think that, an organization like Quant would be on the Hedera governing council. It's just a matter of, it's always been framed that the governing council is comprised of potential competitors in an industry, right? IBM and Google. But what about if a governing council member is a competitor of Hedera? That's decentralization, baby. Quant node for Hedera. Let's go. Solo Gang Gang says, Dead Pixels Ghost Club. I always will be and always have been in support of Dead Pixels Ghost Club joining the governing council. Nothing more to say there. TWH Boone says, Microsoft, Walmart, or Starlink. Microsoft is very interesting because I've talked about this again on the show many times, but you see the Microsoft logo pop up over and over and over again in all sorts of different Hedera use cases, even subsidiaries of Microsoft. Great example is MTech. So for me, Microsoft, especially too, as a company with a very strong AI play, and I don't know if they have a very strong Web3 play. The last thing that was kind of crypto related that I heard from Microsoft was them being incredibly upset about NFTs being incorporated into Minecraft. So I don't know how gassed up Microsoft is for throwing their hat in the ring. But again, if I look at it objectively, Microsoft as a governing council member, juicy, and probably really useful. And, Walmart, again, Starlink, interesting. You can obviously ideate and connect all sorts of dots as to how, a satellite-based interconnected network to provide internet globally to the world would be able to leverage, Hedera in some capacity, and the excitement that would be generated by an Elon Musk production joining the governing council. Be very interesting. Baller Alpha says Microsoft. Helix 1984 says waiting on the Maersk announcement. Again, another one from Maersk. This Twitter username I can't even pronounce, so apologies. I'm just not going to try. Says United Services Automobile Association, USAA, is an American financial services company providing insurance and banking products exclusively to members of the military, veterans, and their families, maybe including Lehman and Mance. So we look at insurance, we look at those different types of things. USAA, interesting. Stephen Horlicher on Twitter, X, says Apple, Walmart, X, JP Morgan, and Amazon. X obviously would be interesting. We have seen posts by Christian Hasker and Rob Allen and Patches, who's listening right now, and lots of folks in the Hedera community talk about all of the different ways that X could leverage the Hedera network. We all, just even from a payments purview, we also see that kind of playing out in Galaxy and naturally see that how that could be applied to X. We also know Elon Musk tweeted at the HBAR symbol and talked about, hash ledgers and different things. So it's like we've talked about those connections here and there. I'm not going to go on and on about it, but great prediction, solid prediction. Dr. Iabnomiel says Patreon. I could see Patreon as a use case. Probably not as a governing council member. I don't know how big of a company they are. HBAR Bandit says Golden Corral and JC Penney. I'm 100% behind both of those. Dr. Bogendorf says, give me anything, and shared the Titanic, it's been 84 years meme of the sweet old lady who threw her necklace over the boat. Yeah, I feel you. I mean, it's been a long time since a governing council member. So at this point, literally anything would be great. HBAR Rocks says, Dubai. And I clarified this with HBAR Rocks. I said, do you mean the country or the region? And they said, yeah. And I said, oh, okay, interesting. And, you kind of think like, okay, what entities would join the governing council? And I've heard people talk about potentially a DAO, right? So if we look at the future and we look at, okay, like corporations and LLCs and organizations and NGOs and nonprofits and their, cooperatives, there's all these, standard ways to organize a company or an entity. And, what other ones could be out there? What other kinds of entities could join the governing council? Who knows? Type approval 1 says, Sony, Microsoft, and, Sony's interesting. I actually had the social media manager for Hedera, Oliver, on the show. I think episode 95. We talked about, I asked him, why did Hedera follow the Sony, at the time, Twitter account and then unfollow it? I just asked him that, and he was like, to be honest, he checked the Twitter account and was like, oh, we're following Sony? Weird. And then he just unfollowed Sony. He was like, I don't know why we're following Sony. So I don't know if there was any reason why Sony was followed. So that's really the only connection that Sony has to Hedera. I mean, Sony is also a part of this other L1 that's more focused on the entertainment industry and these different types of things. So I could totally see Sony, Microsoft, and then Take-Two. I mean, like specifically mentioning Grand Theft Auto. I mean, Grand Theft Auto has more users than this entire network. And if you look at potentially the Hedera token service or the network being implemented into a major video game, Grand Theft Auto would be prime for that. There's already an in-game economy. It's a big game. So it's like, Ubisoft, kind of blue chunks here. They, struggle to hop on a Zoom call monthly. So another gaming company would be kind of cool. I could dig it. Crypto Mags says Sony. Cool. Fever Dad says OpenAI. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I don't know what governing council members on Hedera have strong AI plays. It's hard to know. I mean, Google, of course. I mean, we often talk about, what lies at the intersection of DLT and AI, and Lehman talks about this quite a bit, and what roles a technology like Hashgraph could play in the world of AI. And even talking to Matt Smith, he's from Dovu, about their new charger protocol and real-time API payments using HTS to pay for AI usage. So very interesting things. But I mean, OpenAI themselves, I love it. I think it's crazy. Sean Passler says Meta. That's just insane. Didn't Meta, aka Facebook, copy Hedera's governance model for their Libra project, and then Hedera did a cheeky newspaper ad, and then they've just kind of been clowned on the Hedera community forever. I mean, it's clear they know about Hedera. It's clear that they meet all of the various criteria of what a governing council member would need to have, just in regard to size and resources. They're in all the areas that would be compelling, right? AI, Web3, metaverse. So, I mean, Meta as a governing council member would fit. It would check the boxes. I think it would be too spicy, to be honest. I think it'd be if we want to talk about generating good hype, that might be pushing it too far, to be honest. I don't know how well that would go over. Hedera House says Apple or Microsoft. Med Central says Walmart. Sound of Freedom says PayPal, Microsoft, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Mercedes, Porsche, Unilever. Quite a list. A few interesting ones. PayPal. As we know, PayPal launched their own stable coin. I don't know how that's going. I just got an email from PayPal that because I haven't used PayPal in a while, they're going to charge me a fee. So that sucks. So other than PayPal, just, I don't know what PayPal's doing. I mean, as a governing council member, it's clear that, they probably fit the criteria. Could be a bit of a vibe. And definitely a brand that would generate some excitement. PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, I categorize these under the predictions for like ExxonMobil, right? Like we've seen the breadcrumbs on LinkedIn and stuff about ExxonMobil potentially doing a use case on Hedera with their ESG initiatives and different things like that. And then we look at other troubling corporations like PepsiCo and Coca-Cola doing all sorts of tomfoolery around the world and different things like that. I mean, if we look at it strictly from a resource use case criteria side, I could see the headline, right? PepsiCo joins the governing council on Hedera, to leverage, HCS for, customer loyalty or like, I don't know. You could see the headlines. Same with Coca-Cola. Mercedes. I mean, Hyundai is building a use case on Hedera. I don't know why, Mercedes wouldn't be doing that. Same with Porsche, Unilever. Again, major product company. I think Unilever is leveraging the new 8112 coupon standards. So, I mean, very fair predictions. Nothing wrong with those. OC Pet Doctor says they're concerned about governing council activity. Not quite a prediction, more of a concern, but a shared concern, I think. And yes, I mean, governing council attendance is very good for quite a few, but some governing council members, have had very poor attendance for meetings. And I think that Mans put this pretty well, that even the governing council is beholden to the laws of the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. I don't think the governing council is an exception to that rule. So I think that, the governing council is a group of people working on a group project. And, I think that, 80% of the people are just not going to do a lot of work on the group project. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it is. Let's see here. Says on HBAR says Apple. Crypto Fitness says Tesla. Again, I mean, if we want to talk about controversy and excitement and pumpamentals and all that kinds of things, it's like, hey, an Elon Musk affiliated company, that'd be very cool, but also it would safe to say it would be very interesting to see the governing council meeting minutes with Elon joining the Hedera governing council meeting. I don't know if Hedera is ready for Elon Musk, is what I'll say, for better or for worse, or if ever. I don't know who's ready for that. Country to Crypto says, "Oh no, we have no good news or nothing on the horizon. So now we resort to governing council members. Predictions, ding, ding, ding. We don't have any governing council members since May. So yes, we are resorting to predictions. That's what we do in this community. When we don't have governing council members for a while, we gather around and we dream. That's what we do. And just in regards to no news happening, phooey, there's plenty of good news in Hedera. So I don't know. Mint Melon Mojito, that's a great username, says Ripple. Again, it's been well stated that governing council members will be competitors with each other. What about a governing council member that is a competitor to Hedera? That'd be very interesting. Ripple, as a governing council member, I think I'd choose Quant over Ripple, to be honest. And again, if you're just tuning in now, I know I sound like a crazy person right now. These aren't my ideas. I'm talking about things people post on X in my comments. Tasho Swap says Tesla or SpaceX. The Fexception says be realistic. It's whatever $50,000 can buy. True. If you can become approved by the board of Hedera as they put it, I can't remember where they put it, but like an accepted candidate for onboarding a governing council member. That basically means that you will get $50,000 worth of HBAR if you present to them somebody for a governing council member seat, and then help that governing council member work their way through the process and become a governing council member. You can do that. So give it a shot. OC Crypto Troll says Tesla. Kawileo1 says a big name would be good for the hype and price action. I just want them to build use cases and pay for everything themselves. That's a good point. I mean, I shared my thoughts on Avery Dennison at my IO and, that kind of stuff, but it is true. It would be great to see a high throughput use case that's just paying for it themselves. That would be very cool. Of DLT said something that what I think is a joke, what I think is being presented as a joke, but when you actually look at it, seems very interesting. They said either the World Toilet Organization or Waste Management. And the World Toilet Organization is an organization that is charged with making sure that there are toilets in the world. I mean, still in a lot of places in the world, you don't have a proper toilet to use, and there just isn't that infrastructure in place. And Hedera wants to be the plumbing of the fifth industrial revolution. So the fourth industrial revolution. So having World Toilet Organization would be maybe a solid move. And in all seriousness, when you look at what that use case could bring from a trust standpoint, and knowing that those different deployments of toilets are being used properly and actually being put into place, there's a lot of trust involved, right? So that could be very interesting. Also, Waste Management. I mean, Waste Management is a giant company. Their garbage trucks are driving around everywhere all the time. And I imagine that when we look at where the waste ends up, how it is tracked, how it is treated, where it is buried, all those different types of things, I imagine that provenance comes into that, tokenization comes into that, trust comes into that. So I know that might have been a joke, but I think that, it would not be crazy to see something like those two join the governing council, in my opinion. 7 Gone Day says, one with the biggest impact could be Twitter or X. Okay. Smirts says Alibaba. That's the first time that I've heard Alibaba. And very interesting. We're all familiar with Alibaba. We've all used Alibaba at one point for a doodad or a gizmo. And you could categorize them in the same way as Amazon, from an e-commerce standpoint. Right? It's a global player, right? It would be a Chinese company. Very interesting. Again, not ruling that out. So governing council member predictions. Fourth story. The next stories will be a little quicker, guys. So appreciate everyone tuning in, sticking around. I'm still playing a bit of catch up. There's been so much happening, so I got a lot to talk about. This is my quickest story. I have a question, and this is a story because it's an important question. I have a question regarding permissioned nodes, and this is kind of on the topic of the governing council. And my question is this, if anyone can get me an answer, is what happens to a governing council member's node when a governing council member's term expires and they are no longer on the council, but they still wish to operate their node that they are currently operating? So as we know, come December 31st, there are a few members of the governing council that have their term coming to an end, and they may not renew it, and they may leave the governing council. All of those folks are currently running nodes for the network. So does it mean that on December 31st, when their term expires, that their node is also going to shut down? Right? Will it be the case that, let's say we have 29 governing council members and we go down to 28, someone doesn't renew their term? Does the amount of nodes on the network drop from 29 to 28? That could very well be the case. We have to remember, too, that governing council members can come back later on under various criteria. So to me, I look at that and I go, what's the other scenario where we lose a governing council member, but we keep all 29 nodes? That to me would obviously imply that permissioned nodes, if that scenario were to happen, permissioned nodes would have to be in place before the end of the year, or at least before the unwinding of a governing council node would have to happen. You would need permissioned nodes, right? I'm not talking about community nodes or permissionless nodes or this and that. I'm talking about permissioned nodes. So for me, I kind of look at that and I'm like, what does that look like having a ex-governing council member still run a node? And I look at to another end to this of, let's look at maybe, Hyundai, right? Big company that could very well join the governing council and is working on a use case on Hedera and may look at running their own node as a benefit to their use case. Having permission nodes, it would kind of be like, hey, yeah, let's get our nodes started up. And potentially we could be in a situation where a governing council member joins the council with an already operating node. So that's also very interesting to me. So that's a question that I have. I'm not going to, spin my wheels on it any further, but it's just something that I've had a few conversations about with people in the community, and it just kind of popped up. And as we approach the end of the year, and as we approach, a governing council member or two potentially not renewing their term, it just kind of gets me thinking of like, well, what happens to their node? At this point, I assume it would kind of go offline, but would it be cool if there was a possibility of them keeping their node online? And what would that take? So that's my question. Now, next two stories, number 6 and 7, these are big and very important. This is on the substance side. We're talking about hype and substance today. Data on disk. So this was presented at the recent community call on the Hedera Discord. And this was presented by Richard Baer, VP of Software Engineering at Swirls Labs. And basically, this is a big change in the technology of the network. So with the new data on disk feature, the Hedera network state is stored on disk instead of memory. The perf optimization outcome on Hedera is off the charts. So here are some charts. And the TLDR on this is speed and memory stats have dropped off the cliff, which is a good thing. No database, no blockchain has this type of data persistence. It's a world first. The ever so practically named data on disk is a huge deal. It is the underlying mechanism needed so we can take Hedera to scale to enormous numbers of accounts, NFTs, and other entities. So this is really, really big. And if you look at the charts that were shared in regards to memory, you kind of see all these different writes and reads happening to memory on this chart. And as data on disk is implemented, as of, I believe it was added to or going to be added to the network at some point, it just drops off into like, it's like, for lack of a better analogy, it's like watching someone's heart monitor go flatline, but in a good way. Same with the state right. You see the same types of things and it just kind of drops off. So basically, you're going from a state right, you're going from an average of 50 seconds to 7 seconds. So very, very fascinating. And some high level key points to this is different from any other database. No database has this. No blockchain has this. It's a Merkle tree, but stored on disk. 10,000 transactions a second are still accessed on disk. And it's been invented and written within a year. So this is like, when you talk about moving at speed, like this is out of control. And I think a great wrap up on this was on the Hedera community subreddit, a little take shared by Hotfix Houdini, Reddit user, says, quote, "It sounds like the goal was to make it so the size of the hash graph, in brackets, all accounts, smart contracts, NFTs, etc., right, quote unquote entities, does not impact the performance or TPS, as well as achieve a consistent memory usage instead of memory scaling width." So the theory being, quote, "We should be able to do 10,000 transactions today, 10,000 TPS today with 2 million accounts, and we should be able to do 10,000 TPS next year with 2 billion accounts." It sounds like this actually addresses several issues. One being that smart contracts are large, a lot to load in memory, but a lot of operations on smart contracts only change one or a few variables. This algorithm takes advantage of the Merkle trees to not only change the necessary fields instead of having to load everything, question mark. Another implications is that this is a step towards anonymous nodes. The hardware needs for a node are drastically reduced. Also means that the greenest network has just become even more green. So this is a very fundamental change to the way that this network operates. And again, in the larger picture, a lot of people like to say, oh, Hedera is infinitely scalable and it's amazing, it's so stable and this and that. And it's, reminder, this is a network in beta. There are still things that need to be done to make this network fully scalable and capable. It's not exactly a situation where you can literally just throw anything at it and Hedera will go off without a hiccup. There are throttles in place. There are limits in place to prevent certain things happening, like the network suffering any kind of downtime or different things like that. So there's still work that needs to be done. But the work being done is so cutting edge, so bleeding edge, and so innovative and so impactful. It completely kind of redefines that argument and shows truly that like the pace at which the development is happening on this network and innovation from a technology standpoint is really unmatched. And it's, literally just inventing new technology. It's incredible. And this brings us to story number 7 of the day, which is basically a big upgrade to the Hashgraph itself. So Hedera Hashgraph, the epitome of high performance in the crypto realm, has unveiled a game-changing optimization. By refining its core algorithms, Hedera has managed to streamline the consensus process, achieving the same results with about half the events. This leap not only underscores Hedera's commitment to innovation, but also sets a new benchmark for the industry. So not only are we doing data on disk, we're also doing some other crazy stuff. So basically, the consensus algorithm is this. The hash graph is the consensus mechanism based on gossip where nodes exchange events containing transactions to achieve consensus, right? That's what we're all invested in. If you're not aware of that, definitely check it out. So two key elements here that we're going to talk about are other parent and tip set. So other parent is an event recently created by a different node, selected when a node creates a new event. So basically imagine like a family tree where each person has one biological parent from their own family and one close friend from another family. In the Hedera system, when a new piece of information or event is created, it references the last piece of information from its own family or self-parent, and one from another family or other parent. This other parent helps connect different families of information together, ensuring everyone is on the same page, right? So that's, a bit of a complex process. And tip set is a novel parameter representing the latest event known from every individual node within the network. This is kind of like a new thing. So think of this as a classroom where each student holds a list of the latest news that they've heard from every other student. The tip set is like that list. It represents the most recent piece of news each student has from everyone else in the class. And by comparing these lists, students can quickly figure out what news they might have missed and catch up. So this is all about speed, folks. So Hedera's new approach to selecting other parent and enhancing Hashgraph performance. So initially, other parents were selected randomly from a global list of nodes, just kind of throwing darts at a board. So this is about optimized selection. So a new algorithm allows nodes to analyze potential parents' topological properties and rank their quality. So it's like having a smart system that can pick the best friends for sharing information based on how well they're connected with everyone else, right? It's networking. It's who's who. It's about who you know. We're trying to gossip here. And then the introduction of tip sets, right? So represents the latest event known from every node, aiding in efficient other parent selection. So it's kind of like we talked about in the example above with the students kind of sharing their latest news. So this is basically creating a better hash graph. The essence of Hedera Hashgraph, consensus algorithm, and it's significant to achieving faster consensus. So events exchange, right? The nodes exchange events to achieve consensus on transaction ordering and timestamping. And the parent selection, the choice of an event's parents determines the hash graph's topology, influencing consensus speed. So in Hedera's network, think of each piece of information as a puzzle piece, right? How these pieces connect to each other shapes the puzzle's pattern, affecting how quickly everyone can agree on the final picture. Connecting them wisely and more thoughtfully means reaching agreement faster. So it's not just about jamming all these pieces together through the network as fast as possible. The consensus component basically means that does this actually make sense as a complete picture? And taking a more thoughtful approach in how the hash graph is assembled allows that consensus to happen faster with, as they say in the article on the Hedera blog, half of the events required. So this is like a very substantial upgrade to the hash graph. Now, the optimized other parent selection was integrated into the release deployed on September 20th. So this is already live. And Hedera maintained its transaction volume and latency while reducing shared events between nodes by about half. The visual representation showed a 50% decrease in the average number of events sent out to a node post-release. So again, this is not just like what's coming or talking about some upgrades they want to do. Like this is now currently live on the mainnet. And this is just about, again, enhanced efficiency, maintain performance, scalability, and really like leadership. Like what will Hedera's optimization impact in the broader crypto industry be, right? This sets a new standard, pushing other networks to innovate. But again, this is very specific to Hedera's infrastructure and architecture. So it might not necessarily apply to other networks, but makes Hedera much more competitive than it already is. And, this is just all about scalability, all about speed. I love it. I mean, this is a great example of where substance meets hype. This is where Hedera could choose one of two paths. They could choose to either put out, just an article explaining all the technical implications of this and really needing to understand these nuanced technological things to, understand what this is all about. Or Hedera could once again just tweet out, Hedera is the fastest network, executing the most transactions and capable of handling more transactions than any other network. And we just made it faster and better. They could just say something like that. And people, of course, will freak out. But I mean, let them. I mean, the little controversy is not a bad thing, especially when you have the substance to back it up. Citadel wallet. I mean, people have probably seen folks getting their Citadel wallet demos in the mail. People are very excited. So Citadel wallet unveiled its groundbreaking plans for their Internet of Things, their IoT ecosystem. And they're going to leverage Hedera for this. And they are onboarding a strategic partner, I guess you pronounce it Minu Semi, for producing wireless connectivity modules. And so again, we're talking about Internet of Things, IoT. So obviously, Hedera Hashgraph offers a robust foundation for these little devices. And when we talk about data integrity and transparency and efficiency, you could totally see stuff like this, flying off the handle. So when we look at decentralized identity component, IoT devices can have unique decentralized identities on Hedera, ensuring immutable and easily verifiable identities without a centralized authority. And very often when people say decentralized identity, they're like, oh, they're going to, tokenize my passport and all these scary things. But a lot of times, as it's been said before, I believe by Rob Allen as well, is, very often when you talk about decentralized identity, you're talking about, these little devices, right? Or objects. They have their little identities and stuff. So how is this all going to work? What's kind of the key things about this stuff Citadel Wallet wants to do with all of these different little devices? So they want to offer these kind of transformative solutions and address some challenges in conventional IoT architectures. And one of these things is a serverless infrastructure. So Hedera-based serverless solutions reduce cost, simplifying scaling, and enhancing security. So what is that all about? So serverless infrastructure is like having smart devices that work independently without needing a central computer to manage them. It's cost-effective, flexible, and secure, allowing each device to handle its own tasks and communicate directly with other devices, much like independent team members collaborating in a workplace. So if you have things like smart bulbs and smart devices, generally those products will come with like a hub or a little central device that will act as the manager for those different devices. So now imagine these Internet of Things devices not requiring that. Just they operate independently with each other interoperably. A technology like Hedera would be able to do things like that. And you look at Citadel as a wallet and like now imagine some other different things happening, like, these devices being able to do transactions with each other, transfer things of value amongst each other. And you think about IoT devices like cars, right? Or other autonomous things that move around. There's all sorts of different fascinating possibilities when you look at the convergence of IoT and things like DLT and Hashgraph. Imagine your car being able to pay another car for a better parking spot or something. It's very fascinating. And so the partnership with Minu Semi accelerates product development. So they are recognized for producing low cost, low power, and compact wireless modules. And with this integration, it's a big benefit. I mean, it accelerates the development and manufacturing of these actual little devices. So I'm very curious to see, beyond the hardware wallet, like what other little devices does Citadel Wallet want to produce? And how do we see this little ecosystem forming? It's very, very interesting. So I'm excited to see what Citadel does. I dig it. It's a vibe. Shout out to Citadel. I actually had Andy from Citadel on the show earlier this year. Again, you can go back and listen to that episode. And talked about the plans for the wallet, the struggles making a hardware wallet specifically for Hedera. And it's really interesting to listen to that episode right now as we flash forward to present day with the wallets actually out there and people using them. It's very fascinating. Our ninth story of the day we already talked about. At the beginning of the show, I actually had Brandon from Twigital on the show. Twigital just went live on the main net, so we talked about that. And that brings us to our last story of the day, which is about the show. Episode 100 is coming. And I'm really, really excited about it. And really what I try to do at these big milestones is episode 50, we did something really cool where we looked back over the whole year and we basically just took a look at what were the top most important stories of that particular episode, right? Looking back to episode, 82, episode 71, episode, 64, going all the way back through the show. And I can go through my notes of each episode and look and see, what were the top stories from that episode? And can we illustrate a bigger picture of the year, a bigger overall picture of this whole year, and look at it all together and kind of go back in time and maybe ask a few questions and go, oh, that was a pretty big story. that we haven't really heard a lot about since. What's going on with that? Maybe there's some things to look back at. Maybe there's some things to reinvestigate that fell through the cracks. So that's one thing we're going to do. I also want to give more people a chance to call into the show, hop up on the stage and chat. So that'll be exciting. And then maybe some other surprises and stuff. But to be honest, I kind of want to keep it simple. I want to keep it focused on just recapping the year. Because I think it'll be helpful. I think as we wrap up this year, as we head into 2024, it's going to be really useful to, to just understand kind of where we've been, give some context to things. I saw that the HBAR Foundation just put out a tweet regarding The Guardian. Breaking news here, The Guardian just released version 2.18. Includes a re-implementation of contract-based token retirement operations and adds the capability for block and policy discoverability. The Guardian is going gangbusters. I dig it. I love it. And that's a wrap for Hashgraph Enthusiasts News episode 98. Hype is in the air. Broadcast live on Spaces every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and made available on all major podcast platforms following day. So tomorrow, so stay tuned. This will be up on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that good stuff if you missed it. If you'd like to become a supporter of the show, you can send an HBAR contribution to the address shared at the top. Really appreciate the contributions. This is a community-supported show brought to you by listeners like you. And also it's available in the YouTube description. So check it out. Get all the info you need about the show at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. And, my closing thoughts for the week are really simple. It is time to take a step back. Like I said, let's look at the bigger picture. And I think part of that right now is it's clear from what we talked about today. Hedera, Swirlds, the HBAR Foundation, the Hashgraph Association, Enterprise, Governing Council members, they've got the substance stuff taken care of. They're taking care of it. What we need to do is we need to focus on the hype side. We need to focus on the fun side. We need to focus on the raising morale side. We need to focus on the crazy price prediction side. We need to focus on making this ecosystem exciting and giving people in the retail community as many things as possible to do. Again, I mentioned Hashpack just added new fiat onboarding options, right? They just added that. It's incredibly exciting. So I think that's what this is about. That's what's needed right now. That's what your job is to do. Have some fun. And I'll see you next Wednesday for the news. And as usual, for everyone listening right now, if you see someone listening, hit their profile picture, send them a DM, ask them what's up, ask them what's new, see what's going on. Let's stay connected. And with that, hello future, goodbye past.